The day before Stanley Kubrick died, he called Nicole Kidman on the phone. He told her they are going to poison all of us so fast we won't have time to react. She thought he was being dramatic. He was 70 years old. He had a bad heart. He had just finished the film. He spent 30 years waiting to make a film built on decades of secret research into sex magic cults, occult rituals, and the hidden ceremonies of the most powerful people in the world. 6 days after he screened that film for Warner Brothers executives, he was dead. His daughter had already been taken by a cult during production. His stars would divorce 2 years later. The studio would digitally alter the film before release in ways he never approved and never saw. And 20 years after his death, when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and the world finally started asking questions about elite sexual networks and private islands and the people who were never held accountable, everyone remembered Eyes Wide Shut. Because Kubrick had already shown us. In 1999, in a Venetian mask, on a screen he didn't live to see released. This is what he was trying to tell us. And today I'm going to decode all of it. Welcome to Occult Cinema, where the screen is the sigil. Kubrick. The man, the research, the death. Stanley Kubrick was not a man who made films casually. Every frame of every film he ever made was the result of obsessive, exhaustive, years-long preparation. He was notorious for it. The research that preceded each film was as rigorous as the production itself, sometimes more so. He didn't just read about his subjects, he immersed himself in them until he understood them from the inside. He acquired the rights to Arthur Schnitzler's novella, Dream Story, in the 1960s, and held those rights for 30 years before he made the film. 30 years of waiting, 30 years of research, 30 years of deciding that the time was not yet right, or that he was not yet ready, or that the world was not yet ready for what he wanted to say. After his death, his estate donated his personal research archive to the Stanley Kubrick Archive at the University of the Arts London. The documentary Kubrick's Boxes, made by filmmaker John Ronson, who was given access to the archive, reveals what was inside. Books on sex magic cults, notes on occultism and witchcraft, research on specific secret societies, material on Aleister Crowley and the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO, material on Nazi occultism. Detailed research into the specific ceremonies and rituals practiced by groups that operated at the intersection of extreme wealth and hidden spiritual practice. This was not background reading, this was targeted research. Kubrick knew what he was looking for, he knew what he was building, and he spent decades assembling the material that would go into a single film. The production itself was the longest continuous shoot in film history at the time. 15 months. Cast and crew described it as psychologically exhausting and disorienting. Kubrick controlled every detail with his characteristic obsessiveness. But on this film, the obsessiveness had a different quality. More urgent, more personal, more like a man who felt he was running out of time to say something important. He finished the film on March 1st, 1999. He screened it privately for Warner Brothers executives. By all accounts, the screening was tense. The executives were not happy with what they saw. There are reports, unverified but persistent, of raised voices, of demands for changes, of a confrontation between the man who had made the film and the people who controlled its release. 6 days later, on March 7, 1999, Stanley Kubrick died of a heart attack in his sleep. He was 70 years old, his health had been poor, his death was not medically suspicious. And yet, the timing sits there, immovable. 6 days after showing the most dangerous film of his career to the most powerful people in his industry, he was gone. The film was released 4 months later, with alterations he never approved, with CGI figures digitally inserted into the orgy sequence to obscure explicit content for the American R rating. Kubrick had agreed in principle to the alterations before his death, but he never saw the final altered version. The film that was released to the world was not precisely the film he finished. And the 666 days theory. Kubrick died on March 7th, 1999. Count forward 666 days from that date, and you arrive at January 1st, 2001. The date referenced in the title of his most famous film. Whether this is meaningful or coincidental depends entirely on what you believe about the man who made both films. But Kubrick was not a man who left numbers to chance. The behind-the-scenes horror. The film is about a marriage under pressure, about what happens when the comfortable surface of a life is disturbed, and what lies beneath is forced into the light. The production was the same thing happening in real time. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman were married when filming began. They were two of the most famous people in the world. A golden couple, a Hollywood institution, the embodiment of the kind of wealth and beauty and apparent perfection that the film was about to interrogate. Kubrick knew this. He chose them for it, and then he spent 15 months using it. He asked them personal questions. He managed the dynamic between them with deliberate precision, making sure neither felt more central to the film than the other, creating a productive tension that he could harvest for the camera. Kidman later said that Kubrick was mining their marriage, excavating it, using the real relationship as raw material for the fictional one. The film required them to explore jealousy, desire, infidelity, the hidden lives that exist beneath the surface of even the most intimate partnerships. It required them to do this in front of a camera operated by a man who had spent 30 years researching the occult dimensions of human sexuality. For 15 months. They divorced in 2001, 2 years after the film was released. Whether the production contributed to the breakdown of their marriage is something only they know. But the film that was supposed to be about a marriage in crisis was made inside a marriage in crisis. The art and the life were not separate. And then there is Vivian. Vivian Kubrick was Stanley's daughter. She had collaborated with him throughout her life, filming the behind-the-scenes documentary for The Shining at 17, composing the score for Full Metal Jacket at 24. She was his creative partner as much as his child, and when he asked her to score Eyes Wide Shut, she said no. Because during the production of Eyes Wide Shut, Vivian Kubrick joined Scientology. Stanley wrote her a 40-page letter. 40 pages, handwritten, personal, desperate, begging her to come back, to leave the organization, to return to her family and to the work they had always done together. She did not respond. She did not leave. She attended his funeral with a Scientology handler standing beside her. Think about what this means in the context of the film he was making. A man spending 15 months making a film about the psychological and spiritual danger of cult-like organizations, watching his own daughter be consumed by one in real time, unable to reach her, unable to pull her back, writing 40 pages that went unanswered. The film is about a man who gets too close to something he was never supposed to see and cannot process what he finds. Kubrick was living that story while he made it. The source. Before we go inside the film, we need to understand where it came from. Arthur Schnitzler wrote Traumnovelle, Dream Story, in 1926. He was a Viennese physician turned writer. He was also Sigmund Freud's neighbor, his close friend, his intellectual companion. Freud once wrote to Schnitzler, telling him that he had avoided meeting him for years because he was afraid of his own double, that Schnitzler had arrived through literature at the same understanding of the human psyche that Freud had arrived at through science. The novella is Freudian architecture in narrative form, the unconscious surfacing through dream and fantasy, the repressed returning in distorted form, the marriage as the site where the civilized self and the animal self are in constant negotiation. The night journey as the descent into the id, the part of the psyche that does not recognize social law or moral constraint. Kubrick moved the story from Vienna during Carnival to New York during Christmas. This is not a neutral change, it is a precise one. Carnival, the Venetian tradition, the Mardi Gras tradition, the ancient festival of inversion, is the culturally sanctioned time when the mask is worn, when the rules are suspended, when the hidden self is permitted to surface. Everyone knows what Carnival is. The transgression is expected. The mask is the point. Christmas is the opposite. Christmas is the time of family, of warmth, of the performance of domestic happiness. The time when the surface is most carefully maintained. When the gap between the life you perform and the life you actually live is at its widest. When the lights are brightest and the darkness underneath is most carefully concealed. Kubrick set his film about hidden darkness at the time of year when the performance of light is most mandatory. Every scene in the film is bathed in Christmas lights. Warm, colored, beautiful, relentless. The lights are everywhere. They never go out. And underneath them, the ritual, the sacrifice, the surveillance, the gaslighting, the marriage coming apart at the seams. The sacred calendar matters here too. Christmas is the birth of divine consciousness into the material world. The light entering the darkness. The God-made flesh. Kubrick is setting his film about the hidden world of the elite, the world that operates beneath the surface of the civilized, at the precise moment in the sacred year when the divine is supposed to be most present. The irony is not accidental. The divine is being born into a world that has replaced it with money and power and masked rituals in Rothschild mansions. The Christmas lights are not decoration. They are the film's central visual argument, the performance of sacred warmth over the reality of profound spiritual darkness. And the title, Dream Story, Traumnovelle. Kubrick preserved this in the film's DNA even while changing everything else. Is any of it real? Did Bill dream the entire night? Is the mask on the pillow a supernatural event or a domestic confrontation? Is the ritual a genuine occult ceremony or a performance staged to frighten an intruder? The film never answers. Because Schnitzler never answered. Because the question, what is real and what is dream, is the question the film is actually asking. And the answer, if there is one, is that the distinction may not matter as much as we think. Fidelio, the password, the opera, the research. Bill needs a password to get into the mansion. The password is Fidelio. Most people assume this is a reference to Mozart. It is not. Fidelio is Beethoven's only opera. And the fact that it is consistently misattributed, even by people who have seen the film multiple times, is itself a kind of password. The people who know the difference are the people who have done the work. The opera tells a specific story. A woman named Leonore disguises herself as a man, taking the name Fidelio, and gets herself hired as a prison guard in order to rescue her husband, who has been unjustly imprisoned. She infiltrates the system. She uses the system's own structure against itself. She operates in disguise, under a false identity, in a space she was never supposed to enter, in order to reach someone she loves who is being held by people more powerful than her. The parallels to the film are precise. Bill infiltrates a system he was never supposed to enter. He operates under a false identity. He is not a member, he does not have the second password, he does not belong. He is trying to reach something, truth, understanding, the hidden world that exists beneath the surface of his comfortable life, that is being held by people more powerful than him. And the Latin root, fidelis, faithful. The password for an infidelity ritual is the word for faithfulness. The key that opens the door to transgression is the word that names the thing being transgressed. This is Kubrick's most precise irony, and it is not accidental. His research into mystery school traditions and secret society practices revealed something specific about the use of passwords and recognition signs in initiatory organizations. The password is never arbitrary, it is always meaningful. It always encodes something about the nature of the threshold it guards. In Freemasonry, the passwords of each degree encode the specific knowledge that degree is designed to transmit. In the OTO, the recognition signs and passwords of each initiation level correspond to the specific magical working of that level. The password is not just a key, it is a teaching. It tells the initiate, if they understand it, what they are about to encounter. Fidelio tells Bill, and tells us exactly what the ritual is about. It is about fidelity. About what fidelity means. About what it costs. About what happens when the comfortable performance of faithfulness is stripped away and the actual state of the marriage, the actual state of the self, is forced into the light. And the second password, the one Bill doesn't have, the one that would have allowed him to stay, the one that marks the difference between the outer circle and the inner circle, between the people who attend the ritual and the people who run it. Bill gets through the first door, he never gets through the second, and the entire film is the consequence of that, of a man who saw enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be safe. The ritual scene explained. The mansion sequence is the center of the film. Everything before it is the approach. Everything after it is the consequence. And it is the most precisely constructed occult ceremony ever put on a mainstream cinema screen. It was filmed at Mentmore Towers in Buckinghamshire. Mentmore Towers was built for the Rothschild family in the 1850s. It was sold in 1977. Kubrick chose it deliberately, not just for its visual grandeur, for what it represented. A house built by one of the most powerful families in the world. A house that had hosted the kind of gatherings that the film was depicting. A house whose walls had absorbed the specific atmosphere of extreme wealth and hidden practice that Kubrick was trying to recreate. The visual language of the ritual was influenced by the 1972 Rothschild Surrealist Ball at Château de Ferrières. Photographs of that event, which circulated privately for decades before becoming more widely available, show guests in elaborate animal masks, footmen dressed as cats, taxidermied animals as decor, the chateau bathed in orange light. Salvador Dalí designed accessories for the guests. The event was simultaneously a work of art and a demonstration of power, the kind of gathering where the most powerful people in the world could be themselves in ways they could not be in public. Kubrick studied those photographs. He studied the atmosphere they created, and he built something that captured it. The specific quality of extreme wealth performing transgression for itself, in private, with the certainty that no consequences would follow. The chant that accompanies the ritual is a Romanian Orthodox liturgy, played backwards. This is not a generic spooky sound effect. This is a specific sacred text, a specific piece of religious music from a specific Christian tradition, deliberately reversed. The desecration of the sacred as the foundation of the ritual. The inversion of the holy as the mechanism of the working. Kubrick chose this specifically. He could have used anything. He used a reversed Orthodox liturgy because he understood what that meant in the context of what he was depicting. The ritual itself maps with extraordinary precision onto a specific practice documented in Aleister Crowley's writings, the eroto-comatose lucidity. This is a specific OTO working in which a participant is brought to the edge of consciousness through sustained sexual stimulation, not to orgasm, but to the threshold of it repeatedly until the rational mind surrenders and a liminal state is achieved. In this liminal state, between waking and sleep, between the conscious and the unconscious, the participant is said to be accessible to divine or demonic contact. The veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary becomes permeable. Look at the ritual in the film. The red cloaked figure, the high priest, presides over a circle of women. The women move through the assembled masked men. The energy in the room is deliberately held at a specific pitch, not released, not resolved, but sustained. The ritual is not an orgy, it is a working. The sexual energy is being raised and directed toward a specific purpose. The participants are not there for pleasure, they are there to generate and channel something. Kubrick's research into the OTO and Crowley's specific practices informed every detail of this construction. The hierarchy visible in the ritual, who stands where, who moves and who remains still, who is masked and who is not, corresponds to the specific organizational structure of a thelemic magical working. This is not atmosphere, this is architecture. Kubrick built a functional occult ceremony and put it on screen. Chapter 6. The Mask. Identity, Initiation, and the Pillow. The mask is the film's central object. More than the mansion, more than the password, more than any single scene or image, the mask is what Eyes Wide Shut is about. In occult tradition, the mask is not a disguise. This is the fundamental misunderstanding that separates the initiated from the uninitiated reading of the film. A disguise conceals who you are. A mask transforms who you are. When the shaman puts on the mask of the bear, they do not pretend to be the bear. They become a vessel for the bear's spirit. The mask erases the individual identity and opens a channel for something else to move through. The Venetian Carnival mask has a specific history that Kubrick understood and encoded. Venice during Carnival was the one time and place in European history where the rigid social hierarchies of the pre-modern world were genuinely suspended. The mask made everyone equal, or rather, it made everyone unknown. The nobleman and the servant wore the same mask. The priest and the prostitute moved through the same streets in the same anonymity. The mask was not just permission to transgress, it was the mechanism of transgression. It created the space in which the hidden self could operate without consequence. At the mansion, everyone is masked. The men in tuxedos and Venetian masks. The women in masks and nothing else. The red cloaked figure whose face we never see. The mask is the uniform of the inner sanctum, the visual language that says you have surrendered your individual identity to the collective working. Bill is masked, but he is not one of them. He has the costume, but not the knowledge. He has the outer form, but not the inner substance. And the ritual knows it. The ritual finds him. Because a mask can conceal identity, but it cannot confer initiation. You cannot fake belonging to something you have not been through. His unmasking is the most dangerous moment in the film. The red cloaked figure commands him to remove his mask. And in that moment, in the silence of the assembled ritual participants, in the vast space of the Rothschild mansion, surrounded by people whose faces he cannot see, Bill Harford is exposed, not just as an intruder, as the uninitiated, as someone who reached for something he had not earned and was not ready for. And then the mask appears on his pillow. Did Alice find it in his coat and place it there as a confrontation, telling him she knows where he went? Or, the cult could have placed it there as a warning, to say, we know where you live, we know where you sleep, we know who lies beside you? Or did it appear there by means that have no rational explanation, the supernatural intrusion of the ritual world into the domestic world, the mask following its wearer home? Kubrick never resolves it, because the mask on the pillow is the film's central image of exposure. The false self, the social performance, the comfortable identity of the wealthy Manhattan doctor, lying in the most intimate space of the marriage. The thing that was supposed to stay hidden has come home, and it is lying next to the person Bill has been hiding from. Sex magic, the real tradition. Kubrick's research boxes contain specific material on sex magic, not as a curiosity, not as background color, as the central subject of what he was building. Sex magic is one of the oldest and most consistently misrepresented practices in the Western occult tradition. It is not what popular culture thinks it is. It is not simply the use of sexuality for titillation dressed in occult language. It is a specific and sophisticated system of practice with a coherent theoretical framework and a documented history reaching back thousands of years. The foundational principle is this: sexual energy, the energy generated by arousal, by desire, by the approach to and experience of orgasm, is the most concentrated form of life force available to a human being. It is the energy of creation in its most literal sense. And in the occult traditions that work with it, from the tantric traditions of India and Tibet to the Western ceremonial magic of the OTO, this energy can be directed, focused, used as the fuel for a specific magical intention. The tantric traditions understood this first. In the left-hand path of Tantra, the Vamachara, sexual practice is used not for pleasure but for liberation. The practitioner uses the energy of desire to dissolve the ego, to break down the boundary between the individual self and the universal consciousness. The orgasm is not the goal. The dissolution of the self in the moment of orgasm is the goal. The moment when the individual ceases to exist and something larger moves through. Aleister Crowley brought this understanding into the Western ceremonial tradition through the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. The OTO's 8th and 9th degrees are sex magic degrees. The specific practices of these degrees were among the most closely guarded secrets in the organization. Crowley documented them in his private diaries and in coded form in his published works. Kubrick's research archive contained material on these specific practices. The erotocomatose lucidity, the specific practice that the mansion ritual maps onto, is a Crowley working from 1912. The practitioner is brought to the edge of orgasm repeatedly, by assistance, not by a partner, without being allowed to complete the experience. The sustained arousal without release produces a specific altered state, a liminal consciousness between waking and sleep, between the rational and the irrational, between the individual self and whatever lies beyond it. In this state, the practitioner is said to be capable of receiving communications from their holy guardian angel, the higher self, the divine spark, the part of the consciousness that exists beyond the ordinary ego. The mansion ritual is this working performed collectively. The assembled participants are being brought to a sustained state of arousal, not released, not resolved, in order to generate a collective field of sexual energy that the ritual's operators can direct toward a specific purpose. What purpose? The film does not say. But Kubrick's research into the OTO and the specific practices of the higher degrees gives us a framework for understanding what is being attempted. The women in the ritual are not victims. This is the reading that the film's surface encourages. The male gaze, the objectification, the power differential. But in the context of the actual tradition, Kubrick was drawing from the women in the ritual are the operators. The sexual energy flows through them. They are the generators. The masked men are the audience, the outer circle, the ones who benefit from the working without understanding it. The women are the ones who know what they are doing. This is why the woman who redeems Bill, who steps forward and offers herself in his place, has the power to do so. She is not a victim making a sacrifice. She is an initiate exercising her authority within the ritual structure. She has the power to intervene because she is not peripheral to the working. She is central to it. Ziegler, the pool table and the gaslighting of Bill. Victor Ziegler is the most important character in the film. More important than Bill. More important than Alice. More important than the red-cloaked figure at the mansion. Because Ziegler is the man who controls the narrative. He appears first at the Christmas party, the host, the patriarch, the man whose wealth and charm set the tone for the entire social world the film inhabits. He is the one who calls Bill upstairs to revive the overdosed woman, Mandy, in his private bathroom. He is the one who introduces Bill to the surface of the hidden world before Bill knows he is being introduced to anything. And at the end, after the mansion, after the surveillance, after the mask on the pillow and the newspaper headline and the growing certainty that something terrible has happened, Ziegler calls Bill to his private billiard room and explains everything. The pool table sits between them. Red felt. A barrier of red, the color of desire, of danger, of the hidden world, between the man who controls the narrative and the man who stumbled into it. Ziegler does not sit. He moves around the table. He controls the space. He controls the conversation. He controls what Bill is allowed to believe. He tells Bill the ritual was a charade, a performance staged to frighten him. He tells Bill that Mandy's death was a coincidence, a junkie who relapsed, nothing more. He tells Bill that the people at the mansion are not dangerous, that Bill was never in real danger, that the whole thing was theater designed to send a message to a man who had wandered somewhere he shouldn't have. And Bill, exhausted, frightened, desperate for the world to make sense again, wants to believe him. This is the gaslighting, the reduction of the terrifying to the mundane. The powerful man with the charming voice and the red felt barrier telling the less powerful man that what he saw was not what he saw, that what he felt was not what he felt, that the world is safe and comprehensible and the people who run it are not doing what they appear to be doing. Ziegler is the devil figure of the film, not the red-cloaked figure at the mansion. That figure is too obvious, too theatrical, too much what we expect the devil to look like. Ziegler is the real thing. The charming, powerful, reasonable man whose explanations are always too neat, whose version of events always serves his interests, whose friendship is always conditional on your willingness to accept his version of reality. Was he telling the truth? The film never confirms it, and that ambiguity is the point, because the most effective gaslighting is the kind you can never definitively disprove. Ziegler gives Bill just enough truth. Yes, I was there. Yes, I know who you are. Yes, the woman died, to make the lies plausible. The truth is the container for the deception and the surveillance. Bill is followed from the moment he leaves the mansion. The man in the street, the letter at the gate, the hotel clerk who has been contacted, the costume shop owner Milich who has been reached. The network extends into every corner of Bill's ordinary life, his patients, his neighborhood, his professional contacts. The cult's reach is not limited to the mansion. It is everywhere. It is the world he lives in. It has always been the world he lives in, he just couldn't see it before. This is the Epstein parallel that made the film go viral after 2019. The network, the reach, the powerful men who are never held accountable, the women who disappear, the gaslighting of anyone who gets too close, the version of events that is always too neat. The world that operates beneath the surface of the respectable world, using the same people, the same institutions, the same social structures, but for purposes that the respectable world is not supposed to know about. Kubrick built Ziegler in 1999, and in 2019 the world finally met him. The marriage is the real ritual. The mansion ritual is the obvious ritual in the film. The robes, the masks, the chanting, the red cloaked figure, these are the things that look like occult practice. These are the things that get analyzed and decoded and discussed. But the real ritual in Eyes Wide Shut is the marriage. Alice's confession is the working that initiates everything. She and Bill are lying in bed, stoned, comfortable, the Christmas party behind them. And she tells him about the naval officer, a man she saw at a hotel the previous summer, a man she exchanged a single glance with, a man she never spoke to, never touched, never saw again. And she tells Bill that in that moment she would have given up everything, him, their daughter, their life, their marriage, for one night with a stranger she had never met. This is the atom bomb. This is the working. Alice has spoken the truth that the marriage has been built to conceal, that beneath the performance of the perfect couple, beneath the Manhattan apartment and the beautiful child and the comfortable life, there is a self that the marriage has never fully contained, a desire that the social contract of monogamy has suppressed but not extinguished. Bill cannot process this, because Bill has never looked at his own marriage honestly. He has been performing the role of the devoted husband without examining whether the performance corresponds to anything real. Alice's confession forces him to look, and what he sees, the gap between the life he performs and the life he actually lives, is what sends him out into the night. His journey through the city is the initiatory ordeal, the dark night of the soul, the descent through the levels of the hidden world, from the patient's daughter who confesses her love, to Domino the prostitute, to the jazz club where Nick Nightingale plays, to Rainbow Fashions where the costume is assembled, to the mansion itself. Each level strips away another layer of the comfortable self. Each encounter forces Bill to confront something about desire, about power, about the gap between what he performs and what he actually is. Rainbow Fashions is the threshold. The costume shop, open at 2 a.m, run by a man named Milich who will sell anything to anyone for the right price, is the place where Bill assembles the costume that will allow him to enter the ritual space. The rainbow is the spectrum between the ordinary world and the hidden world. The two models at Ziegler's party told Bill they would take him to where the rainbow ends. Rainbow Fashions is where the rainbow ends, and what lies beyond it is not a pot of gold. The color coding of the film maps Bill's journey precisely. Red, desire, danger, the hidden world, dominates the mansion sequence and the Ziegler pool table scene. Blue, dream, fantasy, the unconscious, dominates the scenes with Alice. Bill moves between these two worlds, the red world of transgression and the blue world of the marriage, without ever fully inhabiting either. And Alice's dream. She tells Bill about it after he returns. A dream in which she was in a beautiful garden, naked, with many men, laughing at Bill, performing acts she will not fully describe. The dream mirrors Bill's night with a precision that cannot be coincidental. She dreamed what he lived, or she lived what he dreamed. The boundary between their inner lives, the boundary that the marriage was supposed to maintain, has dissolved. And her final word. After everything, after the confession and the night and the mansion and the surveillance and the gaslighting and the mask and the dream, Alice looks at Bill in the toy store and says they need to fuck. Not make love, not reconnect. Fuck. The most direct, most physical, most unperformed word for the thing the marriage has been dancing around. The word that strips away every layer of social performance and gets to the actual thing. The body, the desire, the reality beneath the ritual. It is not a resolution, it is an anchor. The only thing left when everything else has been stripped away. The sacrifice and the scapegoat. She appears twice in the film, and both times she saves Bill Harford's life. The first time, at Ziegler's Christmas party, in the private bathroom upstairs, naked and unconscious from a speedball overdose, Bill revives her. He is the doctor. He does what doctors do. He brings her back from the edge and asks no questions and accepts Ziegler's version of events. A friend who got carried away, nothing to worry about. Please don't mention this to anyone. Her name is Amanda. Mandy. Curran. She is a model. She moves in Ziegler's world, the world of extreme wealth and the people who orbit it. She is not a member of the inner circle. She is adjacent to it, close enough to be used, not powerful enough to be protected. The second time, at the mansion, in the center of the ritual, surrounded by masked figures in the vast space of the Rothschild property, she steps forward. Bill has been unmasked. He has been exposed as an intruder. The assembled ritual participants are waiting for the judgment of the red-cloaked figure, and Mandy steps forward and says, "Let me redeem him." She offers herself in his place. She accepts whatever consequence the ritual demands for the intrusion of the uninitiated, and Bill is released. He walks out of the mansion alive because a woman he barely knows, a woman he revived from an overdose at a Christmas party, stepped between him and the consequence of his transgression. The next day, she is dead. Ziegler tells Bill her death was a coincidence, a junkie who relapsed. These things happen. She was not a stable person. She was not someone whose death should be investigated too closely. She was not someone whose absence would be noticed by the people who matter. This is the scapegoat. The figure from Leviticus 16, the innocent who bears the consequences of the guilty. The one who is sent into the wilderness carrying the sins of the community so that the community can continue. Mandy bears the consequence of Bill's transgression. She dies so that he can return to his wife and his daughter and his Manhattan apartment and his comfortable life. The Christ parallel is precise. She redeems him. She offers herself in his place. She dies so that he can live. And like Christ, her death is presented as something other than what it is. A natural death, an overdose, an accident. The cover story that allows the world to continue without examining what actually happened. Was she murdered? The film does not confirm it. Ziegler's explanation is plausible. She was a drug user, she relapsed, these things happen. But the timing, the juxtaposition of the headline, the fact that she was the one person who could connect Bill to the mansion, the fact that her death removes the only witness to his intrusion who was not already part of the inner circle. Kubrick leaves it ambiguous. Because the ambiguity is the point. Because the most effective cover story is the one that is plausible. Because the world that Ziegler inhabits, the world that Epstein inhabited, the world that the film is about, operates precisely through the production of plausible cover stories for implausible events. Mandy is the film's moral center, not Bill, who stumbles through the night without ever fully understanding what he is seeing. Not Alice, who tells the truth but cannot reach Bill with it. Mandy, the woman who had the least power and exercised it most completely, who stepped forward in the center of the ritual and offered herself for a man she barely knew, who died, whether by murder or by relapse, in the space between the hidden world and the ordinary world, in the gap between what is done and what is acknowledged. Kubrick spent 30 years researching the world that Mandy inhabits, the world of extreme wealth and the people who orbit it, the world of private rituals and public cover stories, the world of women who are used and discarded and whose deaths are explained away by powerful men in billiard rooms. He made one film from that research. He died 6 days after showing it to the people who controlled its release. And Mandy, the woman who redeemed the protagonist and paid for it with her life, is the reason the film exists. She is what Kubrick was trying to show us. Not the mansion, not the masks, not the ritual. The woman who was lucky to be alive, and then wasn't. The screen was the sigil. The sigil worked. And Stanley Kubrick ran out of time to say anything else.